Marie Osmond, a name once synonymous with innocence and hope in the golden era of American entertainment during the 1970s. With her angelic voice and radiant smile, she became a national treasure, the shining jewel of the Osmond family, and a cherished memory for millions who grew up watching her on television. But as with all glittering lights, fame cast a cruel and unrelenting shadow. Behind the camera, there was a little girl who never got to be a child, a woman pushed to the brink by the demands of perfection, and a mother who, in the most tragic twist of fate, lost her beloved son to the same darkness she herself once fought to survive. And at 65, she shocked the world with a decision few could understand, choosing to leave none of her fortune to her children. Today we step into the extraordinary, heartbreaking journey of Marie Osmond, a woman who smiled for the world while quietly crumbling inside. Marie Osmond never truly had a childhood. At only 3 years old, while other little girls clutched teddy bears and played in the sun, she stood beneath scorching studio lights, clutching a microphone. Her innocence wasn't simply lost, it was taken, traded for fame, before she could even grasp its meaning. Born in 1959, the only daughter among 9 Osmond siblings, she was not just part of a family, she was the centerpiece of a brand. From the moment she could walk, her life belonged to the public. While other children learned to read or giggled through games of hide and seek, Marie was memorizing lines, perfecting harmonies, and enduring the relentless schedule of a rising television sensation. Her first major television appearance came in 1962 on The Andy Williams Show, a moment most toddlers would forget, but for Marie, it marked the beginning of a lifetime. Tethered to the spotlight, her parents, devout Mormons, demanded nothing short of perfection. Every sibling had to master instruments, undergo rigorous training, and teach one another. Joy was not an option. When Marie once asked to go outside and play, her mother's answer was chilling. "No, you can't go. You have work to do." Marie would later admit, "I felt more like a product than a child." At just 11 years old, she was sent to Japan for a commercial shoot, an adventure that turned into a nightmare when the boat she was traveling on capsized, leaving her stranded in shark-infested waters. Though she was rescued, sunburned, and dehydrated, there was no time to rest. She was immediately sent back into the recording studio, her injuries dismissed. "I was covered in burns," she recalled, "and still I was told to smile and sing. It's tragic, it's cruel, and it's heartbreakingly real." In her memoir, Behind the Smile, Marie revealed the deep emotional toll of those years, the confusion, the isolation, and the emptiness behind the perfect image. Even as she became the radiant darling of America's favorite musical family, her true self was muted, disconnected from joy, rest, and any sense of control. And yet, she did not break. That strength, forged in relentless pressure, would become the armor that later carried her through public scrutiny, devastating heartbreak, and unimaginable loss. Just when Marie Osmond thought she had endured the hardest part of her young life, fame came calling again, this time with a new kind of pain. At just 15, she became the glowing face of The Donnie and Marie Show, a primetime variety program that catapulted her into national stardom. To millions, she was a picture of charm and innocence. But behind the bright lights, she was locked in a private war with her own reflection. Standing beside glamorous icons like Jaclyn Smith, Farrah Fawcett, and Raquel Welch, Marie often felt like a little girl pretending to be a star. That insecurity became dangerous when studio executives delivered a cruel ultimatum: lose 10 pounds or risk cancellation. At the time, she weighed just 103 pounds. Fear and shame drove her to comply, starving herself down to 93 pounds by following a punishing lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup cleanse. a diet never meant for a teenager. Her routine was agonizing. She would fast for days before tapings just to fit into costumes that represented acceptance more than artistry. What she thought was control quickly spiraled into something darker. By her early 20s, she was battling both anorexia and bulimia. In 2018, she finally admitted, "They called me an embarrassment. At 103 pounds, I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to feel. It was the only way I could take back control." As if the physical toll weren't enough, Marie was forced to confront deeper wounds. In 2019, she revealed that she had been physically abused as a child, a haunting experience she had kept hidden for decades. Her obsession with weight was never simply about beauty. It was tied to the lifelong belief that her value depended on perfection. This toxic equation eroded her spirit piece by piece, and yet she endured. She performed through silent suffering, pushing forward for her fans, her family, and perhaps for the little girl who never got to simply be a child. The applause roared, but behind it stood a young woman crying out for self-worth. Through all the glittering gowns and dazzling stage lights, Marie Osmond sang of love, but her own heart knew a very different story. In the late 1970s, while she was America's sweetheart on television, Marie was quietly navigating her first romances. One of her earliest crushes was Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers, a soulful admiration that never blossomed beyond gentle friendship. Soon after, she dated Andy Gibb, the golden boy of pop, whose warmth she never forgot. But his struggles with addiction and the heavy demands of fame ended their young love too soon. "He had the kindest heart," she later said. "I only wish the world had been kinder to him." Then came David Cassidy, another teen idol who, on the surface, seemed the perfect match. They were both adored, beautiful, and successful. But behind the scenes, their worlds spun too fast and too far apart. It was like trying to hold on to a dream while everything else was spinning out of control, Marie remembered. In 1982, she married former basketball player Steve Craig, believing he could give her the normal life she longed for. At just 22, she welcomed a son and embraced the role of wife and mother. But within 3 years, the marriage collapsed. "I felt like I had failed, not just as a wife, but as a mother," she admitted. A year later, she wed Brian Blosill, a relationship that lasted more than 2 decades. Together, they raised a blended family of 8 children. To the outside world, it seemed she had finally found stability. But behind closed doors, the cracks were there. Emotional distance, unspoken pain, and the quiet exhaustion of holding everything together. "I was tired of pretending everything was okay," she later revealed. It wasn't. By 2007, after 21 years of marriage, they divorced. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of her belief that love might finally last. Marie entered this new chapter with a fractured heart, unaware that the most devastating chapter of her life was still to come. To the public, Marie Osmond seemed to have everything: fame, beauty, and a career most could only dream of. But behind the curtain, she was fighting one of the most relentless battles of her life. By 1999, after giving birth to her 7th child, Marie was no longer the vibrant figure audiences adored. She was consumed by postpartum depression. Her body ached, her arms felt heavy, and her thoughts terrified her. What many dismissed as baby blues had spiraled into something far darker. One day she walked out of her home, leaving her children with a babysitter, and drove aimlessly for days. When she returned, a doctor confirmed what she already feared. She was battling clinical depression. In a 2010 interview with Oprah, she admitted there were moments when she wondered if the world would even miss her if she were gone. "That's how depression speaks to you." "It lies," she said. Her pain was compounded by public scrutiny. In 2006, rumors spread that she had attempted to take her own life. Though her publicist clarified it was a reaction to medication, the tabloids had already seized the story. Marie chose not to lash out. Instead, she used her platform to speak openly about mental health, hoping to help others suffering in silence. In 2007, while competing on Dancing with the Stars, Marie collapsed live on national television just moments after finishing a samba routine. Viewers watched in shock as paramedics rushed to her aid. Though she quickly recovered, and even made a joke about it, it was a stark reminder of how deeply she was pushing herself emotionally, mentally, and physically. Through it all, her love for her children remained her anchor. "Motherhood is not for the faint of heart," she once said. "It breaks you down, but it also rebuilds you in ways you never imagined." That love would soon be tested beyond anything she could have imagined, when tragedy struck in the most devastating way. No mother should ever have to bury her child. But in February 2010, Marie Osmond faced the unimaginable when her 18-year-old son, Michael, was gone forever. She had been preparing for a live performance with her brother Donnie when she noticed a missed call from him. Minutes later, the phone rang again, this time from the coroner's office. Michael had fallen from the 8th floor of his Los Angeles apartment. The official report listed multiple blunt trauma from the fall. There were no drugs, no alcohol, only the silent, crushing weight of depression. Michael had battled those dark thoughts for years and had promised Marie he would never harm himself. But later, she found a note. A final message revealing that he had been bullied and felt hopeless. "He didn't tell me," she said, her voice breaking, "because I didn't know. I couldn't help." The guilt was a wound that would never fully heal. For days she could not eat or sleep. And yet only a few days later, Marie walked back onto the stage. "The only reason I went back to work," she explained, "was so I wouldn't sit in a room and cry all day." Through this unimaginable grief, she made a choice, not to hide, but to speak. She began sharing Michael's story on national platforms, not for sympathy, but to raise awareness about mental health, bullying, and the importance of truly listening to loved ones. Even years later, the pain lingered. On the anniversary of his death in 2023, she wrote, 13 years, and not a day goes by that I don't think of him. Grief doesn't disappear. You just learn to carry it differently." In turning her sorrow into purpose, Marie became a beacon for those who had faced the same darkness. She could not save her son, but through her voice, she hoped to save someone else's. After Michael's death, life did not ease its grip on Marie Osmond. More waves of heartbreak came, each one cutting deeper. She lost her beloved mother, Olive, in 2004, her spiritual anchor and best friend. Just 3 years later, her father, George, passed away, leaving her without both of the guiding lights who had shaped her. In 2018, tragedy struck again when one of her grandchildren died. She spoke of the loss only briefly, her voice trembling, saying, "Loss doesn't get easier. It just becomes more familiar." Then, in 2022, her daughter Jessica's husband, Chris, was killed in a senseless act of street violence. Watching her own child grieve was a pain within a pain, a helplessness she knew all too well. Around the same time, her older brother Verl suffered a severe stroke, and in early 2025, her beloved brother Wayne passed away at 73. "Another giant hole in my heart," she wrote. Fans who had followed the Osmonds for decades grieved with her, knowing Wayne had been more than just a sibling. He was a lifelong friend, confidant, and co-performer. Through all of this, Marie never retreated from life. Her home in St. George, Utah, a sprawling 10,000-square-foot sanctuary she's owned since 1999, became her refuge. Filled with personal touches and memories, it's where she walks in the desert air, rides bikes with her grandchildren, and lives at a slower, more intentional pace. In 2011, life gave her an unexpected gift. She remarried her first husband, Steve Craig, nearly 3 decades after they divorced. They chose May 4th for their wedding, the shared birthday of her late son Michael and her mother, Olive, making them part of the joy. She also made headlines with her decision not to leave her estimated $20 million fortune to her children. "I love my kids enough to make them strong," she explained. "If you hand them everything, they get lazy. I want them to know the joy of earning something." Critics called it harsh, but for Marie, it was an act of love, instilling the same values of discipline, purpose, and faith that had shaped her. Today, Marie Osmond is no longer the flawless teen idol the world once saw. She is a living testament to perseverance. Her legacy is not defined by her fame or fortune, but by her courage to rise again and again from the ashes of loss. She still walks onto stages, not for attention, but because music remains the language of her soul. And every time she sings, she carries Michael's memory with her. Her life is proof that even when everything shatters, you can build something beautiful. That the greatest legacy isn't what you leave behind in wealth, but in the strength, love, and example you pass on. Quietly powerful, deeply human, unforgettably real.